And it's time for today's business matters. Delta is offering $30,000 to passengers who were on board the plane that flipped over in Toronto. A Delta spokesperson said the payment offer is a good faith gesture with no strings attached. There were 76 passengers and 4 crew members aboard the flight when it crashed during landing and overturned on Monday. Now, videos showing the plane hitting the ground hard, bursting into flames, then skidding along the tarmac and flipping over. The crash left passengers who were actually buckled into their seats, dangling upside down. Toronto Pearson Airport said none of the passengers were critically injured in the crash, which authorities are still investigating. And shoppers flooded to Walmart for groceries and clothing last year, but now the retail giant is warning of a slower 2025. Walmart is the largest retailer in the United States and a bellwether for consumer spending. Walmart said today its sales and profit growth are expected to decrease this year, partly due to inflation ticking back up and President Trump's tariffs. Walmart's projected outlook is a signal for the rest of the retail industry that 2025 will be a rockier year. Consumer prices rose 0.5 percentage point last month from December, and that's the fastest pace in more than a year. Meanwhile, drug maker Eli Lilly is going big on slimming down. Financial statements show the company has recorded nearly $550 million in pre-launch inventory, and this is for its experimental oral weight loss drug. This is an unusual move. That's because Eli Lilly is stocking up more than a year before the drug is expected to be launched. And the drug still has to report data from its late-stage trial that's expected to be by April. In its mid-stage trial, the highest dose led to about 15% weight loss after 36 weeks for people who were obese or overweight. Right now, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk dominate the weight loss treatment market. And Starbucks' new CEO is refining the coffee chain. Brian Niccol told the Wall Street Journal that Starbucks bet too hard on mobile and drive-through services, and it has not paid off. He says the company should have focused on customer experience, and he is bringing back the comfortable coffee house vibe. Former CEO Howard Schultz said its mobile app became the primary place to order, and at the same time, the primary pain point for dissatisfaction. And this is clear in past earnings reports. Last year, the company said between 1 in 7 or 8 customers left their order because of how busy the Starbucks was. Former Vice President Kamala Harris has signed on with one of Hollywood's top talent agencies. Creative Artists Agency announced the deal on social media Wednesday. The agency says it will represent Harris in all areas, but will focus on speaking engagements and publishing. CAA also says it will work with the former Democratic presidential nominee on her post-White House initiatives. The agency also represents former Presidents Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Netflix is beefing up the streaming wars in Mexico. Its CEO announced that the entertainment giant will invest $1 billion to produce films and TV series there over the next 4 years. Ted Sarandos said he looked forward to entering more partnerships with producers in the Latin American nation. The Hollywood Reporter says Netflix also plans to invest $2 million to the storied Churubusco Studios. Netflix has been cementing itself in the country. Its service first became available in Mexico in 2011. The company produced its first series outside the U.S. in Mexico and set up its Latin American headquarters in Mexico in 2019. An unlikely pairing. U.S. oil and biofuel groups have teamed up. They have banded together to urge the Trump administration to increase volumes of renewable fuels required to be blended into the nation's fuel mix next year and beyond. Oil and biofuel industries have historically been at odds on issues related to the Renewable Fuel Standard program. The law requires refiners to blend biofuels into fuels like gas or buy credits from those that do. Both industries have aligned, though, in their opposition to electric vehicles, which threaten liquid fuel. The chief executive of Spanish oil company Repsol said he expects President Trump's energy policies will have a positive impact on the gas industry, including increased output and lower prices. Repsol produces gas in the United States. The CEO said increased supply will help bring gas prices down globally, thereby aiding European heavy industry. Trump ordered a lifting of the freeze on liquefied natural gas export approvals. the day he started his second presidential term. Former President Biden had paused the issue of new licenses early last year. The U.S. is trying to increase its gas exports to help reduce Europe's dependency on Russian gas. And automaker Stellantis is taking the wheel on self-driving technology. The company has unveiled an STLA AutoDrive, its first in-house developed automated driving system. Stellantis says it's a hands-free and eyes-free feature. It can take over in stop-and-go commuting at speeds up to 37 miles per hour. The system will notify drivers when the feature is available and is activated with a physical button. AutoDrive will then adjust speed and manage steering and braking. The maker of Jeep and Ram said that future updates will be available and able to handle higher speeds of up to 59 miles per hour and even off-roading. Stellantis said AutoDrive is ready for deployment. Value over volume. Mercedes-Benz has announced more cost-cutting. It also plans to pivot toward gas and diesel cars in its new product lines after its battery electric car sales collapsed by a quarter last year. Now, most of the new combustion models will be in its top-end price tier. This is a sign the car maker is still committed to its strategy to sell a lower volume of higher-margin vehicles. The German luxury car maker is trying to revive margins as the company braces for a sharp drop in earnings this year. Earnings last year slumped 30%. The return on its car division this year is expected to be around 6 to 8%. A report from J.D. Power and Global Data says new vehicle retail sales in the U.S. are expected to rise 8.1% to 1.01 million units in February on an adjusted basis. But the rise in sales is not enough to offset the decline in total profit per unit for retailers, which is projected to be down 11.8% from a year earlier. So despite discounts from manufacturers and higher sales volumes, rising dealer inventories and increased competition have pressured profitability for retailers. The average retail transaction price for new vehicles has been high and is up $71 from February 2024. Would the proposed Doge dividend add to inflation? A potential $5,000 check going to every American. Here's more.
We give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens.
The Doge dividend, a potential $5,000 check to every American.
A check saying that the federal government misused your funds. Now it's time to refund those tax payments back to the people.
It all started with this X post featuring fund manager James Fishback. Elon Musk replied in the comments, "We'll check with the president."
$520 million for a consultant. I want to know who is that consultant? To do ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance investments in Africa.
Fishback's idea is that taxpayer money has been wasted and now 20% needs to be returned to them. He argues this would incentivize taxpayers to help look for more waste, fraud, and abuse.
If you're seeing things that are wrong and egregious and wasteful and abusive and fraudulent, now you have every incentive to call that out. And that's what the Doge dividend does.
The more they find, the bigger their checks. Though handing out checks could add to inflation.
What that's doing is just throwing more gas on that fire. It's just inflating the currency that much more.
Financial advisor Eric Alexander says inflation happens when there are too many dollars, making each dollar worth slightly less.
I don't think it will be that inflationary.
Finance professor Michael Busler says he believes the Doge dividend would add to inflation, but the amount would be negligible.
Now consumers with that will be able to buy things that they may not have been able to buy. Therefore, that'll keep the economy from slowing down and probably will increase economic growth.
Busler says many people are doing very poorly because of past inflation. He says the Doge dividend would help them buy necessities they previously couldn't, as opposed to buying a lot more in general.
And Microsoft says it has created a new chip that shows quantum computing is much closer than recently believed. Quantum computers hold the promise of carrying out calculations that would take today's systems millions of years. But the fundamental building block of quantum computers, called a qubit, is extremely difficult to control and is prone to errors. Microsoft says its Majorana 1 chip is less prone to those errors than rivals. The chip has been in the works for nearly 2 decades and has a new type of material. Next, Chipotle Mexican Grill says it's preparing for what it calls burrito season. So to that end, the chain says it's hiring 20,000 more workers. Chipotle says it sees a surge in demand from March to May, making it the busiest time of the year for its restaurants. Revenue rose more than 18% in the second quarter of last year. The company attributes that to its popular burrito bowl, as well as increased demand in warmer months. Demand overall has been stable in spite of diners' concerns about inflation and static wages. Chipotle operates more than 3,700 restaurants in the U.S. United States tariff policy is proving to be a thorn in the side of some countries, most notably China and Canada. Both countries are expressing their own style of disdain and retaliation. NTD Sean Marshall has more information.
China is concerned about the reciprocal tariffs put forth by the United States. China is urging the U.S. not to, quote, arbitrarily wave the tariff stick for coercion. These are the words of the Ministry of Commerce spokesperson at a press conference in Beijing on Thursday.
China has noted that the United States has recently announced it has implemented so-called reciprocal tariffs on all trading partners. China is deeply concerned about this. International trade is based on each country's own resource endowments and comparative advantages to effectively promote global economic development and improve the well-being of the people all over the world.
He made the remarks in response to a media query about a memorandum U.S. President Donald Trump signed on February 13th, directing his administration to determine the equivalent of a reciprocal tariff with respect to each foreign trading partner. Canadian citizens and officials have recently been expressing concern over American tariff policies in their own ways. Canadians have canceled trips south of the border, boycotted U.S. alcohol and other products, and even booed at sporting events after President Trump announced 25% tariffs on most of Canada's goods on Saturday. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced their own retaliatory tariffs on $107 billion of U.S. goods.
The fundamental truth of this all is we don't want to be here. No one wants to be here. This is completely unavoidable, yet we are here and we are going to respond. We are not, I think, for some people in the U.S., perhaps Donald Trump, they took our kindness for weakness. And we do love our American cousins, but we will not stand by for this type of action to be taken, and we will respond every single time that they take an action. We will respond in kind.
Trudeau also encouraged Canadians to buy local and vacation in Canada, a sentiment echoed by many local officials. Ontario Premier Doug Ford ordered American-made liquor to be off the shelves of the Provincial Controlled Liquor Control Board of Ontario, the only alcohol wholesaler in Canada's most populous province. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Hasbro has laid out a $1 billion cost savings plan as the U.S. toy maker navigates subdued demand for its products. In its new strategic plan, Hasbro will also target an average of mid-single-digit revenue growth and 50 to 100 basis points of annual operating profit margin improvement through 2027. Now, rival Mattel earlier this month forecast annual profit above estimates and warned of price hikes following tariffs. Hasbro's CFO said the company is trying to move the current 50% of U.S. toy and game volume originating in China to under 40% of the next 2 years. Unlike in the first Trump administration, toys are not expected to be excluded from the latest tariffs. The Swiss government says American tourists helped the Swiss hotel industry reach a record number of overnight stays in 2024. The stronger dollar and inflation abroad made alpine trips more attractive. The sector has struggled in recent years with a lack of snow and the pandemic shutdown. The influx of transatlantic travelers last year helped. The number of overnight stays in Switzerland rose to a record 42.8 million in 2024, with a 14% rise in stays from U.S. travelers. Switzerland was seen as a less expensive travel option for Americans due to inflation here in the U.S. Tourism supports over 167,000 full-time jobs in the country and nearly 3% of Swiss gross domestic product. Switzerland Tourism said American tourists came mainly for the mountains. Spring break is coming for millions of students, and AAA has compiled a list of the top destinations travelers are booking. The time-honored tradition of heading to the Sunshine State is continuing. Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and Tampa all made the top 10. Some people looking for an urban experience more than escaping the cold are heading to Chicago and New York. And if you're going overseas, no real surprises there either. Top destinations include Rome, London, Paris, Barcelona, and Madrid. But for those who are flying, it's going to cost. The average price for a spring break domestic ticket is $820, and for international travel, more than $1,400. Okay, on to markets now. U.S. stocks sold off today as ongoing tariff jitters and a downbeat forecast from Walmart. Those dampened investor risk appetite. Now, a broad sell-off pulled all three major U.S. stock indexes into negative territory, as you can see right here. And with the blue chip Dow suffering the steepest loss, S&P 500 snapped its two-day string of all-time closing highs. So gold prices actually surged to a record high, suggesting that a flight to safety amid mounting uncertainties. And Walmart, as I mentioned earlier, the world's largest retailer, provided current fiscal year sales and profit forecasts that fell shy of Anna's expectations, which potentially is suggesting dampening consumer demand. And that's it for today's Business Matters.